Who is it?
Police, open up.
How do I know you're the police?
After I shoot you through the door, you can examine the bullet. Open up.
Mel Gibson, Danny Glover.
Come on, let's go, Rod.
No, shut up.
Let's go. Come on, Rod. Don't be a killjoy.
Come on, we're back.
We're bad. You're black. I'm mad.
Come on, man. Hey, listen. If we're going, shouldn't I have a gun?
No.
Hey guys, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And this is Movie Matters. We continue sequels month with Lethal Weapon 2 from 1989. Richard Donner film, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover. Good movie. Have you ever seen this, Jake?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I can't remember if I've seen like the real version or like the TV version or like a hybrid of the two, but I have seen this before.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched this movie in a long time.
Same.
I barely remember any of it. Pretty much all of it, I don't remember.
I completely forgot that Joe Pesci is in this movie, so it's been a while.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's in the third and fourth one. Okay. He's so good. Yeah, I mean, this movie gave me Die Hard vibes. Like Die Hard with a Vengeance almost, too. Which this came out before that.
Yeah. This movie is very much a like movement movie. Like there's a lot of different sets and set pieces, and there's not a whole lot of repetition in setting. It's like a very, I guess, fluid is like the way I'd describe it. It's a lot of momentum and like constant change.
It's different
like,
from the first one.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. And I like that, especially in the sequel.
I mean, it's interesting. I have a couple like nitpicky things about this movie, but overall it's good. I do like the first movie better.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a couple things that like bug me a little bit about this movie, and I'm interested to hear your trivia on it because I think some of it might be explained through the trivia.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can just get into it. Yeah,
let's start with. So first off, the first movie was made for $15 million and made $120 million at the box office worldwide. So super successful for Warner Brothers and producer Joel Silver, who we know from Die Hard and obviously the first movie. Joel Silver asked Shane Black, who wrote the first movie and came up with the characters and everything, to write the sequel. And so he started writing it. He was kind of in a dark place in his life. And the original title for the screenplay was called Play Dirty, which is really cool. I like that. I like that title. It's a very sought-after script, Play Dirty, because it's not the final version of this movie that we watched. His script was rejected by the studio, the director, Richard Donner, and Joel Silver, the producer, for being just too dark and bloody. Which, reading about this in the trivia, I really want to see this movie because it sounds fucking awesome. Not that this movie wasn't awesome, because I really, really enjoyed this movie a lot. Originally, Riggs, Mel Gibson's character, dies in the first draft in Play Dirty, and the studio wanted to keep him alive because of sequel potential and all that. So, he, that's just the studio, machine, which is annoying. And I get it. You don't really kill the main character in movies often, and how do you bring him back? Think of like the newest John Wick. Like, spoiler alert for people who haven't seen it, he dies. And people keep asking to like bring him back. I mean, prequels, yes. I don't know. It's just movie franchises are just all about the money. It's like, calm down. Like, kill the character. I don't care. As long as it's good for the story. And from reading, again, the trivia, it's really cool for the story and for the character. So The original script focused on Riggs's arch nemesis and worst nightmare, Pieter Vorstedt. That's the guy he called Adolf in the movie. He always made fun of him, called, like, basically compared him to Adolf Hitler. They fight. There's this crazy ending fight scene in this, like, crazy field of fire. And they fight, and Riggs gets stabbed and dies protecting Murtaugh. But he ends up killing the main villain. And Shane Black's reason for killing Riggs in his draft of the script, as he said in an interview, was in the first film, Riggs is like a suicidal maniac mess of a person.
Yeah.
And he didn't care about, like, dying, but he cared so much about his friendship with Murtaugh and cared so much about his family. Mm-hmm. So him going out and sacrificing himself would be, like, the last thing for him to finally live at peace, which is super fucking cool and an awesome ending, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, like, he's incredibly self-destructive and, like, does not have, like, any fear of death. So,
yeah.
like, that's, like, a perfect kind of circular way to, like, tie up his character arc. Because he, like, in the first movie, he's not afraid to die, but he has nothing to live for.
Yeah.
And then, like, coming full circle and dying for Murtaugh kind of completes his character arc in, like, a really nice way. So, yeah that would have been a really cool way to tie up this.
Yeah. I mean, the first one starts with him having a gun in his mouth, pulling the trigger, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and just, Shane Black had said, like, how the death scene he wrote for Riggs was beautiful and would make the audience cry. And Black later labeled the rejected screenplay as the best thing he's ever written, and learned to trust his instincts after that experience, which is pretty interesting. And this movie was shot with two different endings, where he does die and he doesn't die. But again, a lot of the screenplay was changed from Shane Black, and that's why Shane Black didn't return for Lethal Weapon 3 and 4, because he just was like, the character changed way too much. He gets a writing credit or a story credit because he created the characters.
I was watching for that in this one. He didn't get the directing credit, so I was like, whatever. But
who, Shane Black?
Yeah,
Richard Donner directs all of them.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay,
yeah.
Then I misremembered, but I knew he wrote the first one.
Yeah.
But then I saw he got a story credit and no writing credit, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And
that's exactly why.
I think this movie feels that way. A little bit. It
doesn't have his full DNA on it.
Yeah. Like, because the overarching plot of this movie is really cool and really interesting. The whole, like, foreign diplomat running a, like, multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise and can't be touched because of diplomatic immunity is kind of like a really high-level, cool concept.
Yeah.
Which we talked about the first movie also is kind of like a higher-level crime movie, even though it's just like kind of also a run-and-gun action kind of movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like... But I guess I'll just launch into my nitpicks of this... of the movie. Like,
yeah, go for it.
But let me start with the positives. One, this movie starts out unbelievably great with like a 10-minute car chase that's like epic. It just so great. There's like awesome funny moments. You like
good banter
immediately
right away.
reestablish the friendship between them, and like they're... And it's not like, it's like buddy tenuous, because like they just keep like, they get on each other's nerves, but they're friends, like, like beating the shit out of his wife's brand new station wagon, Murtaugh's wife's station wagon, like, the joke where he's like, there's not enough room, and like he like crashes into like the side of the
side
like the car's like sideways.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, you're right, there wasn't enough room. It was like a great line. This huge chase scene. Like there weren't even like opening credits in this movie because it just jumps straight in, which was interesting. But then like as the plot develops. They find the Cougarans in the trunk of the car after the car chase ends. From there, I feel like there was almost a bunch of improv dialogue. The dialogue is like super fast paced, and there's a lot of yelling over each other in the movie, like constantly. And not even just Murtaugh and Riggs, but other characters in the scenes are all like yelling at the same time and like talking over each other, and like it's just like very muddy. Where like the first Lethal Weapon's like very clean, the dialogue's very deliberate. People don't just like say things just to like fill like space, you know? Like there's several times where like I feel like both Glover and Gibson like repeat things several times, like they're trying to like come up with something to say, you know? Like they're improvising. So like I guess like that's where I think Shane Black's touch is gone in this movie. Though I mean there's some good interactions, particularly once Leo Getz is introduced, and Joe Pesci's, you know, great in this. And like their like three-way like developing friendship is like really funny and like wacky, you know, so like it adds like that fun element that I think the movie needs, because otherwise it's like a really serious kind of like crime action movie. But yeah, so anyway, I think like the dialogue I think is lacking compared to the first one, and I think that's primarily because Shane Black wasn't as involved.
Yeah. So again, like I said, they rejected his script because it was too dark and bloody. They wanted more comedy. That's what they wanted. The studio and Richard Donner, and I think like Leo Getz, Joe Pesci's character, was like a minor character. He was on like 2 pages initially on the script, in like the original script, and then they made him more comedic relief for the movie, which he does have some great lines in this movie. And there's one line in particular that I love that literally I like laughed my ass off. And I rate movies on like Letterboxd and stuff like that, and I was going to give it a 3.5, but literally because of one line that Joe Pesci said, I gave it a 4 because it was just awesome. And it's the line where he gets captured by the South Africans and he's getting the shit kicked out of him. And then he gets rescued by Riggs and Murtaugh, and he's like hugging them, which is hilarious. And then his face is all fucked up from getting the shit kicked out of him. And he's like, "Can I run the siren the whole way back to the station?"
Yeah.
And it's just like that line is so damn good in this movie. And it just made me like fall in love with this movie. And yeah, it was great and super entertaining. So, what other nitpicks do you have? Or is that it?
So I mean, Pesci's character is like, without the comedic relief, he's kind of a throwaway character.
Yeah.
He doesn't add anything significant to the plot, besides providing comic relief throughout the like second and third acts.
And it's like super coincidental that his character is involved in their case when they get reassigned from this South African case. It's like, you can't do that anymore. But yet, guess what? This guy we're going to protect, this protective custody witness, happens to be involved in the case. It was a little too coincidental for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
but
a little like
I get it.
What's like Deus Ex?
Yeah.
Kind of like they like shoehorned it in there. I think a little. It probably was they wanted to fill him out more in the movie and just kind of shoehorned him into the plot as like the money launderer for these guys.
Yeah.
Which like again wasn't. I mean, he has some information that he gives Riggs and Murtaugh, but not like enough to like bust the case wide open and like or anything like that. But I'm not upset that Pesci's in it and that his character exists, because he's a fun character and he does add something to the movie that otherwise I think the movie would hurt a little bit.
Yeah, I could agree. His character it's just very different from his Goodfellas and Casino character that I'm personally used to. He's just kind of a dweeb and like just a klutz almost.
Yeah. He's clearly like a slimeball criminal, but he's like the polar opposite of like his usual like mafia kind of persona.
Polar opposite.
He's more closer to his character in Home Alone in this than he is to like Goodfellas or anything else.
So I have a funny piece of trivia about that. So his whole shtick with the okay, that it comes from apparently Disneyland employees giving directions to guests at Fantasyland. Like that's what they based it on, which is interesting. He was originally going to be an oily, like effeminate character, but Joe Pesci didn't want to play him that way, which is kind of funny. I mean, also makes sense.
Yeah.
He pitched the idea of making Leo all too eager to like to please. And so he ad-libbed that, okay, which is awesome. And Donner loved that, Richard Donner, the director. The phrase is actually referred to in Home Alone by having the phrase, okay plumbing, on their van.
Oh, no shit. That's funny.
Yes. So, yeah, for Harry and Marv, for their characters, it's their plumbing van, which I never noticed and never realized.
No, I didn't know that. That's funny.
So, funny that you mentioned he's very similar to his like Home Alone character, where he's kind of a klutz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like his character. He's really funny in the other two as well, the third and fourth one. You said you haven't seen the fourth one, right?
I can't remember. I thought this was the fourth one, so they're all like mixed up in my head.
Did you buy the quadrilogy?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I bought it, so I will be watching them soon.
Yeah.
And they are 90s movies, the third and fourth.
Yeah,
which there apparently is the fifth movie in the works. Richard Donner died a few years ago because he was going to direct it, and Mel Gibson and Danny Glover were returning. And it's kind of been at a standstill. And I think I don't know why. Maybe because of Mel Gibson's troubled past, potentially. But he wants to direct it, which would be awesome because he's actually a really good director.
Yeah.
You got Braveheart, you've got Hacksaw Ridge. He's coming out with a new movie with Mark Wahlberg, where Mark Wahlberg has like a weird haircut where he's like half bald. It's called like it's not like Flight Risk or something like that. It might be called that. I literally watched part of the trailer today and I was like, this movie looks interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, I think all the movies made money. I don't know about the third and fourth one. I'm assuming they will. They made money. I mean, this movie made $82 million more domestically than the first one, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Which that's unusual for a sequel. This movie's also the most successful in the franchise. It made 140, almost 148 million domestically, which is a lot, especially then. It was made for 28 million, and it made 228 million worldwide. Made a lot of money. It was nominated for Best Sound Effects Editing, which it didn't win. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna look up.
Was this the highest grossing movie of the year it came out?
I don't think so. I'm gonna Google that too. But any other nitpicks while I do that?
Yeah, so kind of going off of Leo's like mild irrelevance to the plot, like
Last Crusade. Oh, Lethal Weapon was number 2.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I bet it was Indiana Jones, and it is Indiana Jones.
This was 89.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last Crusade came out then, and Look Who's Talking made a shit ton of money. The Baby movie with John Travolta, and I think isn't what's his name, Magnum PI in that? Tom Selleck?
Tom Selleck? That's so
Yeah.
random.
I think it is, isn't it? Or am I thinking of Three Men and a Baby?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that. But yeah,
Okay,
so
yeah, I'm thinking of Three Men and a Baby, but John Travolta is in Look Who's Talking.
yeah, I think the other, element where Shane Black is missing in this is just the like overall kind of composition of the movie. Like I said earlier, the plot is awesome. The overarching story is awesome. The characters are great, and like it's evident that Black was involved in developing that, aspect of the film. But I feel like the movie itself is kind of just a bunch of like scenes strung together, and like it's not super cohesive in my opinion. Like each scene is like great as like a standalone action comedy, thing, and like they're loosely associated, but like excuse me, like the toilet scene like doesn't need to be in this movie, even though it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't need to be in the movie, and like if you took it out, no one would miss it. Same with like the
It's
the
a long
love-
scene too.
It is very long. The love scene with Gibbs and the
Rika?
South African secretary is like unnecessary.
I want to talk about that though.
I kind of get what they were trying to do with her. She's kind of like the hearkening back to his wife being killed, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like even like the Leo stuff, just like it's just a little disjointed to me.
Okay.
And like it didn't bug me when I was watching it. It bugged me sitting and thinking about it for a few days.
Interesting.
So it's like, am I just being a nitpicky asshole? Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, and I'll probably talk about this in our Beverly Hills Cop 2 review, which is coming up next week. The plot is kind of strung together, and it's just like, oh, these guys are smuggling in this money to basically do drugs, and you find out it's like drugs at the very end, where it's like,
Yeah.
I wanted a little bit more from the villains, and in the original draft, the South African villains were like super brutal and violent. And again, I like I said, they had the Adolf guy, Pieter, be Riggs's arch nemesis, which would be cool because I mean he killed his wife. That guy killed his wife, and you find that out, and it's like, oh shit.
Well, and like that, I felt like too was almost like a throwaway scene in this.
Yeah.
And like it's very glossed over, and like that should be like front and center, and like that should be what we're developing up to, to the climax.
Should have
Like,
been more
that
of
wasn't
a-
even like the climax of the movie,
Yeah.
like it was a little weird to me. But
I get that.
again, I'm being
in
a
a
little
perfect world.
yeah, I'm being a little nitpicky. And like actually, this afternoon we were talking about Tarantino and what's his name?
Roger Avery.
They have a movie podcast too, where they watch obviously like very esoteric Quentin Tarantino like favorite movies that like no one's ever heard of. But they were on Joe Rogan's podcast talking, and Tarantino made a really interesting comment. I highly recommend watching that episode of Rogan because it's fascinating listening to those guys talk about writing and movie making and stuff. But Tarantino was talking about the difference between television and film, and said that
They just posted articles about this too.
really, I bet, because he's always got like controversial takes, or at least people take what he says and turn them into controversial takes.
Yeah.
But he said that television typically is just kind of a series of events that are like strung along, and there's like no payoff. And he's like, a film always builds up to a payoff and it leaves a lasting impact on you. And like the reason I think people are pissed at him is because he says Yellowstone is basically just a soap opera, and he's gonna forget about it in 3 years and never remember it again. Where he's like, you know, if you pick any movie, like I can tell you a movie that I saw when I was 9 years old and like recount it like almost like verbatim, you know, because it has this like lasting impact. And for like reference, he talks about season 1 of Homeland, and how season 1 of Homeland is actually an 8-hour film because it culminates in this like big payoff with the suicide vest and the presidential bunker.
That
and
show
like his
was
daughter
awesome
being like,
for
"You're gonna
season
come home tonight," and like, you know, convinces him not to kill everybody. You know, sorry if I just spoiled Homeland for you, but you had plenty of time to watch it.
Yeah, it's been out a long time. That show was great, and then just slowly declined.
It sucked. It sucked after like season 2.
Yeah.
It just started like they lost the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I totally agree with Tarantino's assessment of like film versus TV, and I think this movie is closer to a television show than it is to a
Interesting.
film.
Okay.
Because of the way it's kind of like,
Disjointed.
yeah, it's like a series of like 20-minute episodes that are just strung together, and like each episode kind of has its own little mini arc.
Yeah.
And like there's not a big payoff at the end. Like,
yeah, like the whole thing with the daughter with the condoms.
yeah, like
It's
doesn't come
there's-
to anything besides being a joke that they reference like twice in the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, now you're making me want to re-rate it.
Positives though, the villain is good. I like a good like white collar villain that's not afraid to get dirty. Like Hans Gruber is like one of the best villains of all time.
Yeah.
I like that kind
These
of
are smart villains. They're not just
Yes.
let me capture
Yes.
the villain. Let me capture the main character, hold him for 5 minutes, and then oh shit, he escapes.
Right. There's no monologue explaining some dumb motivation
Diabolical
to
plan,
take
yeah.
over the world or whatever. Like they're just fucking trying to make money, you know? Like
Yeah.
but they're smart. They have contingency plans. They have, you know, like this guy's leveraging the United States legal code to be able to conduct this, you know, business illegal or legally, basically within the confines of the country, you know, under diplomatic immunity and stuff. Like it's a really cool setup for a villain, and
Yep.
I just wish the payoff on him was better. You know, like the end confrontation is him standing on the top of the boat like diplomatic immunity, and then
Or Murtaugh fucking blows him away.
shoots him in the forehead. It's like, okay, like why didn't you just do that 2 hours ago? You know, like, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'm being a little
I get it. I get that.
overly
I get your
dramatic,
nitpick.
but yeah. But I mean, you know, like I wish there was just a bit more payoff to the movie.
Yeah. I could see that.
But like I said, like the movie's fast paced. It's got a lot of momentum.
It's got great action scenes. For
yeah,
sure.
it's moving through these sequences at like a pretty fast pace. It keeps you engaged. So like in the moment, you're like, yeah, this is fun. Like I'm enjoying myself. It's, you know, you're not like sitting there like, God, this doesn't like weave together properly. Like, you know, it's
Yeah, only after sitting and dissecting it like we do.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
can
mean,
see
it's a like at the end of the day, I think this is a good popcorn movie. It's fun. It's worth watching. Like I
Yeah, it's a
don't
fun
feel
sequel.
like I wasted my time. You know.
I still loved it. I still enjoyed it, but also again, hearing your nitpicking, I totally understand.
I'm just gonna ruin every movie for you from now on.
I know. Well, I'm also pretty easy to please for the most part. Movies, I'm just like, look, entertain me, and I'm fucking sold. That's it. I'm simple.
Yeah.
I'm simple. Like I talk about it all the time. Like I'm tired of fucking movies being 3 hours long and all these biopics. I could give two fucks about biopics.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's movies these days. They're just not making them right, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion, and I'm one person out of the entire world.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it could have just been my mood this week. I'm just like, I'm gonna fucking rip this apart.
No,
I don't
but
know.
you have very valid points on your gripes with this film. I totally understand that, and seeing it your way, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the chase scenes in this movie are great. Like you said, the opening chase scene's awesome. I love when a movie just opens with fun action. It's like you got to hook the viewers right away. And this movie does that. The chase scene with the tow truck is awesome. I love that. I thought it was a cool idea and fun action set piece. And the surfboard
surfboard, awesome. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Well, and like I like a good chase like that that ends in like and ends up not being productive, every once in a while, because like in a gritty kind of crime thriller like this, like you don't want it to be super clean and like every lead they get turns out to be correct, and like they get all this information every single time. They're like nailing it, like, because I think the one thing about the Lethal Weapon franchise, at least the first two movies, is that it's a bit or their police work is like a little clumsy, and like it makes it a little more fun and like real,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I mean, it's almost, some of their stuff is almost a little, it's clumsy, but it's like somewhat perfect.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, that's because it's a movie. I would argue that.
Yeah.
Well,
they like sometimes screw up, and then through like a series of screw ups manage to actually get to the place they're trying to get to.
True. True.
But that's part of the like action comedy, kind of trope. Like it's not clean, but they still win out at the end of the day,
Yeah. Like the scene at the hotel where they meet Leo and then they fly out of the window into the pool. It's like, that's like clumsy police work, I guess. But what's cool is, and I love when he's punching Leo in the face, which is hilarious. When the South African hitman gets out of the pool, did you notice the building across the street?
No, I wasn't paying that close attention.
The Nakatomi Plaza.
Oh, was it? Nice.
Yeah. I was like, is that Nakatomi? And I looked at the trivia, and sure enough, it says that's the Nakatomi Plaza.
That's funny. Is that before or after they blew it up for Die Hard? Would have been after.
Yeah, it would have been after. Blow the roof. You've got a lot of the who's who of 80s actors in this movie. Mm-hmm. You've got You've got, I almost said Bridget Nielsen. She's part of Beverly Hills Cop 2, but she was considered to play Rika in this, which is funny that I said that. Because I was looking at my notes here, and that was the first name that popped up. You got Jeanette Goldstein, who we know from Terminator 2 and Aliens. Mm-hmm. And you've also got her partner, the dude who is the guy driving the BMW at the beginning, and I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, either way, he's in this. You got Dean Norris, who plays Hank in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
You got Grandel Bush, who was in the first one, and he's in Die Hard, and he was in Brewster's Millions and a bunch of other movies we've watched. Which they all die in this movie, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, the diving board scene with Jeanette Goldstein is fucking hilarious. Of her
body does it.
Yeah, that's funny. it sucks that everyone else died. I mean, including Jenna Goldstein. It sucks they all die.
Yeah.
But it gives that revenge fuel that makes Riggs unpredictable and like aggressive, which I love. Like when he gets that way, because he does that in the first one where he's like running down the street chasing after Gary Busey. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and like that, I think was necessary. So I feel like the death of was it Rika?
Yeah.
Like is not enough to push Riggs over the edge. Like he barely knows her. So
I
like
like
you
that,
needed
though.
a little bit more to like really piss him off, I feel like.
I just didn't like when he's in like the grocery store with her trying to like take her home and he's like forcing her to like go home and he's like it was like awkward in my opinion.
Yeah, another
the
scene
things he
that
was
like
saying.
wasn't necessary.
Yeah,
Like
and then they're just like having a beer, which he pours the beer and gives the most amount of head in that beer. There's so much foam in those beers that he poured, and it bothered the shit out of me. But like, then they're having sex, which is not necessary, but 80s movie, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's not that like I just don't like. It's a rushed relationship.
It is. I mean,
you know, to be like, oh, that's the reason why Riggs goes on this rampage is like not sufficient, which is why I think they had to kill like half the police force to like,
and
really
throw in
bolster it.
Yeah, and throw in that guy killed his wife, and it,
Right.
you know. But I like the helicopters coming after him and shooting up his trailer, and the dog like running away, or like running and everything, and like getting into the truck, and that whole scene's super cool and very kind of Die Hard like. It just has that like action vibe to it, which I like.
Yeah.
And then I like that the straight jacket, him getting out of that with his dislocated shoulder, and then they put him basically in one when they throw him over the dock. I thought that was a cool payoff.
There are actually a couple good moments of great writing like that in this movie. I just wish it had been consistent.
Yeah, I think that just shows again, it adds to his character's crazy nature of him dislocating his shoulder and putting it back into its socket, which is intense, which they do in the third and fourth movie. The fourth movie, he gets like both of them dislocated and fucking slams them into like a dock like pole, like support beam. It's pretty crazy.
He takes out a house with his pickup truck.
I was just gonna say that. That apparently cost $500,000 to do. At that time, which is a lot of money. But also,
that scene reminds me a lot of the Live Free or Die Hard. You just killed a helicopter with a car.
yeah, I could see that.
Very similar, kind of like over the top action movie kind of set piece thing.
Yeah, definitely. Very over the top, very 80s. I like the fight at the end with Riggs and Pieter where he like gets stabbed and he stabs him back and then drops the fucking container on him, which is a little goofy but also funny. And then Riggs gets shot the shit out of, and again they cut it where he was gonna they showed it to test audience, either him dying or not dying. And that's why they kind of left in there the knock knock knocking on heaven's door song, which is honestly a pretty cool rendition in the movie.
Well, that's like an interesting song choice when less than 5 minutes later Riggs is joking with Murtaugh. Like
it's like a little somber,
like,
and then
I feel like
but that fits our theme of 80s movies of songs that don't fit at the end.
It's very true. I feel like if they want Riggs to survive, do the fade out, with Murtaugh holding him, and then cut to him in the hospital, waking up or something like that. Like I feel like
just
that's
ends.
it's just like him bleeding out in the bottom of the ship with Murtaugh, and they're like laughing their asses off. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's. So I looked it up, and I've been the third one made a ton of money. The fourth one made good money, but it also had an insane budget. It had a $140 million budget in 1998.
okay.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it came out in 98. Let me see. Yeah, 98. But yeah, overall, I mean, I think this was a great sequel. I enjoyed it. It's another one of those movies where there's a whole bunch of them. I mean, that's pretty much all these movies we're watching this month. There's a whole bunch of them. It's a franchise. Yeah. They got to make money. They got to make movies. It's entertaining. I agree with you with the nitpicking, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a fun movie.
Totally worth watching. Like,
yeah,
don't let my nitpicking ruin anything for you.
Yeah, yeah, you're good. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all the trivia I had. I think it's a good movie. I'm excited to watch, like Rambo and Beverly Hills Cop. I'm definitely going to watch all the other movies. I don't know about Indiana Jones, but because we'll eventually get to Last Crusade, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'll wait for that. But
yeah, I do think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a little underrated.
I agree.
Overhated.
I agree. I agree 100% with you. So
it's not the best of the
yeah.
4 movies. The 5th one I don't think is considered canon, so we can forget about that one.
Yeah. Yep. What's funny is I was told that I forgot to include Indiana Jones on our weekly or our month list of the podcast. So
oh, really?
That I posted on Instagram. So I forgot to put that. We are going to watch that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's definitely a fun movie. Definitely check it out. It's a good sequel. All these sequels we've watched so far are good. So
yeah, like definitely, like I'd say cream of the crop in terms of sequels, because like there are some absolute dog shit sequels, and like these are not those. So
yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week with Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Yep. See ya.